Thank you very much for joining me on the Voice of Job Seekers Live. And uh, I try to do some of this stuff whenever I can, when to do it live where everybody else is supposed to pass. We used to do the audio thing and just audio record. I guess everybody's kind of on the live video show. So you can go back and watch the replay, but eventually it will show up in the podcast directory as a show for that purpose. And I want to welcome you if you've just joined me for the first time. My name is Mark Anthony Dyson, and I am the voice of job seekers. You can always follow me on my stuff, including LinkedIn and Twitter, where you'll basically see the show and this show with Carla Bass. Carla Bass is Colonel Carla Bass, retired of the Air Force, and she's written a book called Right to Influence. And she goes around speaking. You may have even seen her or heard of her on other podcasts. And we're also going to be talking about how writing is useful careers, which is right up my alley because you guys know that's what I mainly do. And I use that as my jump off point of talking about careers and all the things that I've talked about all the past years that I've done. Welcome to the show, Carla Bass. How are you?
I'm terrific. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to communicate with your audience.
Yes. And when you contacted me, it was like, I know her. I know her because I heard you on other podcasts. It was like two other podcasts before. And I said, she'd make a great guest one day, but you get 1,000 people who want to jockey for position for your attention. And you came at the right time. So I thank you for contacting me.
Yay.
It's one of the few times where somebody actually contacts me and I see that they have value and I say yes right away. Everybody else, I kind of haze and give them a hard time to come on the show. And there's a lot of good reasons for that. But yes, Writing to Influence is your book. And you also have a course that's coming up in the spring, Catapult Your Career Right to Influence. But I do want to talk a little bit about why it is almost essential these days to write. And though I'll have a few of my colleagues who say, well, you can do video, you can do audio. Yeah, you could do all those things.
Mhm.
But to me, nothing lasts the test of time like writing does. Would you agree with that, or would you vary from that?
No, I agree. It's all about communication, but there are so many things that you have to accomplish via writing that you cannot
Hmm.
accomplish by podcast or video or other modes of communication. So writing is essential.
Yeah. Yeah, and how you write is also essential. I mean, writing is one thing, but writing well is a whole nother thing. And I've done shows in the past where I've had and a shout out to Susan, the grammar goddess. I don't know if you know her, but she used to hang with me for a couple of episodes about writing and how important it is and how grammar is really important. But a lot of times grammar is seen as kind of the lower entry, and that's what scares people off because they think it has to be about perfection.
Well, actually, the way I teach my writing methodology, think in terms of an inverted triangle.
Hmm.
Inverted. So the top part of that is where you have to actually strategize your message. So it's not just writing, it's not just grammar. You actually have to use some psychology to strategize the message. And I can share a couple quick strategies.
Sure.
Okay, so one strategy is know the audience, which is the cardinal rule of all communication. Do your
Hmm.
homework. You have to know what is it that the audience needs from you. You have to know what is it that you're wanting to achieve from the audience. What language do they speak? And I mean technical jargon. Are you talking to technical specialists or are you talking to laymen? You make sure that you've got the right dialect for the right people. So know the audience is one. Outline your message because time and space is critical. So don't just start talking or don't just start writing. Use the available time and space to outline where it is you're trying to take the reader or the audience. Get those key points, recognize what needs to be emphasized, recognize where your argument is weak, where you need to go fortify it. So I'm a huge believer in outlining. The next is write from the audience's perspective. This is a big mistake that people make, and I've got three examples. For
Mm-hmm.
resumes, people just instinctively write, "How great am I?" And they herald their own accomplishments. That's wrong. What you need to do is look for what is hurting the employer. What skills is the employer lacking? Write your resume from the employer's perspective. I can help you by ABCD instead of I can do all this great stuff. If I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to sell a book, I don't say, buy my book, it won 8 national level awards. You're going to say, well, good for you. Instead, you say, if you buy this book, you will learn too, or you can improve your life by. So focus on the receiving end. If I'm submitting a request for a grant, I don't tout my grant program. What I do is I explain to the grant maker how my program is going to further the grant maker's goals. So those are three examples. When you write from the receiver's perspective.
Yeah.
And two other strategies. One is don't bury the gold nugget, whatever the heart is of what you're trying to convey, because time and space are so critical. Put that up front. And then
Mm-hmm.
you follow that with the backup or the ancillary information. But if I only have 2 minutes with you, what are the most important things I want to convey? Boom, boom. And then everything else is prioritized after that. And then
Yeah.
the final strategy, and this applies to everything, is add detail for context, because that provides the audience a mental yardstick on what you're trying to convey. So, for example, if you have a resume bullet that says, designed and developed an innovative marketing program, that sounds wonderful, but it's lacking the so what. The so
Mm-hmm.
what would be catapulted sales 30% last quarter and is used throughout the company. But the last
Yeah.
strategy, I lied, there's one more, is talk about the what, not the how. So you flip that. Catapulted sales 30% over the last quarter by developing and implementing an innovative marketing strategy. So that last one is you emphasize the what and then the how. So those are just a couple of strategies. But it's all about determining what the message is and crafting that. And then you get down to that bottom part of the triangle, and that's where you actually hone the draft.
Yeah, and I think too, I think a lot of people get in what resonates very much with my audience is the fact that they have to be, what I often say is you have to show that you're the prescription to the employer's job description. You have to show what solution that you're providing them. Otherwise, they're not going to be interested. But I think that that transfers and translates over to, in general, what's going to hold the audience attention,
Yep.
and that they're interested in what will you do for me, not what will sound good to make you sound good.
Yep.
And that's where people often bottom out, even in a simple LinkedIn post. If you're writing a simple LinkedIn post, a lot of people now, I guess, the thing to do is to tell their story. And a lot of people tell their stories very often. But I know I've become disinterested if you tell the same story over and over and you don't have a point where to get to. And I think that's where a lot of people tend to become disinterested. It's great for somebody new to learn about you, but if you want to help people, you got to help them to where they are, not where you think they should be.
Yeah, and that's what I'm all about, is trying to explain not just the importance of writing. We can talk about that in a second, but offer
Hmm.
them the tips, the strategies, and those word sculpting tools to tell them how to do it. And it's really, really easy. People are sometimes intimidated by writing, but if you think about it, it's like a scavenger hunt. And I'll
Hmm.
talk about the word sculpting in just a second. It's like a scavenger hunt. It's like poker or chess, like we just described about know the audience, know what the audience needs or wants. Um, if you are countering somebody else's position and you want to get your position to be selected or your product to be selected, what are the weak points in the opponent's position? and
Hmm.
respectfully but factually counter them. So writing a strategy to it. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah,
You
it can
asked,
be when I
but
was going to say it can be fun, but for a lot of people, it's labor. It's labor intensive, and I think a lot of times people will write and think that they only focus not so much the substance of the message, but for the fact that there is just a message, and really it is about substance many times because that's what often persuades the writer to act in one way or another.
oh, completely. So here are a couple reasons why it's critical to write. Going back to your opening point about is writing more important or equally important to video and other means of communication.
Hmm.
First of all, you have to be able to write to promote your business, to
Hmm.
promote a product or service, or promote a cause, or even promote yourself. It's all marketing, and that's where all
Hmm.
those strategies come into play. If you're wanting to win those contracts or grants. If you're trying to defend your budget, you have to be able to make that compelling case on why, go cut somebody else, but here's what I'm doing, here's the value I'm bringing. Don't cut my budget, and make that compelling case.
Hmm.
If you have a new program that you need additional resources to launch this, well, those resources are coming from somebody else, so you have to be able to make the case. What is it that you're doing? Why does this project deserve money at the expense of somebody else? Um, uh, Publicize good news, trumpet success. When you do bring something in early or under budget, if you are selected for an award, good news is golden nuggets to be able to then turn that around and include that in press releases, in LinkedIn posts, in marketing materials.
Hmm.
Um, Attracting and retaining talented employees is another essential means or need for writing. If you have to explain why it is that you need to come join my company, not the competitors, but you have to know what it is that those employees are seeking. Are they just looking for a salary? Do they want leadership responsibility? Do they want the opportunity to run a program on their own? So again, it comes back to writing from the recipient's perspective. But those are just a few examples on how writing is applied today, and why you need to be able to craft that compelling message.
Yeah, in my own personal experience, and I'll tell you a quick story. I was on a national radio show last year, and the host obviously did their research. They found an article that I wrote from 10 years ago.
Wow.
10 years.
Yep.
And just to think that we weren't doing a lot of video like we are now. We were doing some audio. We were doing a fair amount of video, but it was something in writing that found to someone else's eyes from 10 years ago, and it resonated with them. And I think that that's one of the advantages of having been online and have done a lot of work then, because then people will find they can look and compare and say, oh, this guy's really for real. Look what we wrote from years ago compared to now, and people can see how you evolve, and that resonates so deeply with people. I often still get I get surprised by why it does, because so you can see how you've evolved or why you've stayed the same.
Well, it's a portfolio that you're developing.
Yes, absolutely. And I think people if they think of their career kind of sort of in a portfolio manner, through writing, you can also show the different stages of how you got there, which in part of that resume story is that you're showing that you started here and that you've gotten here, and this is how you've developed through the way that you explained accomplishments, so that you can make it plain to the reader. So, this person's gone through this journey, and not only makes you credible, but it also makes you more palatable for somebody to look into, taking you further into their world and maybe their company, and perhaps up the ladder.
One of the I'm going to read this. One of the biggest mistakes that people make with resumes. It's the verbs. So I apologize for reading this, but I extracted this series of verbs from one resume. So let me read these to you. You tell me, if you were the employer, what would you think about these verbs? Primary liaison for, responsible for, responsible for, responsible for, contributor in, contributor of, maintain, primary liaison, engaged with, responsible for, personally maintain.
That person's giving you a checklist.
Yep.
Uh, they're not really telling about what they've done and how they've impacted their company or wherever they work.
Exactly. And the other thought is, just because you say you're responsible for does not mean you actually carried out that responsibility. And
Yeah.
how did you do it? So I tell people to, flee from verbs like that, and instead talk about partnered with, developed, uh, uh, composed, implemented, deployed, hard hitting action verbs. And then you
Hmm.
follow that with what it is that you actually did, those details about which we spoke.
Yeah, it's making it more functional in the sense of giving it a functionality that you actually have done something to achieve a result as something that you've done something just to fill a line item. And what employers often look for is, okay, what will you do for me? And you need to be able to answer that question through what did you do for your last employer?
Yep. Another way to give your writing punch, to be able to get that compelling message, those are the word sculpting tools that I'm sure you're familiar with now.
Hmm.
But when you get down to that pointy end of the triangle, that's where you go sentence by sentence and you carve out the useless words, the redundancies, the words that hog space. And by the time you've divested it of all that fodder, now you've got that. One, you've got the hard hitting message, and two, you've bought yourself more space to be able to make your case. So here's a couple examples of words that hog space. Um, One is on a daily basis is daily. You never have to say on a blank basis. That's just ubiquitous bureaucratic blather. Everybody does that now, but it's not necessary. To
Hmm.
the maximum extent possible is as much as possible. In an expeditious manner is expeditiously. So go through sentence by sentence and weed out all that garbledy-gook.
Yeah, yeah, and even some of those words could be simplified when in doubt.
Exactly.
A lot of people will want to use a $10 word, but don't think about what each word actually means. Instead,
Yep.
understanding that too, the reader has to be able to is going to just scan it at first. They're not going to necessarily read. They're people in the habit of let me see what I can get from it just by looking at it for a few seconds. Then if you intrigue them enough, they're going to read a little bit deeper. But if you're using words that they have to cut the weeds through, then it makes it a little bit more difficult for them to really understand what you're truly trying to say. So a comment, thank you, Sarah Rose Shrillo Elliott. She has a point that she says she agrees with you about, writing from the receiver's perspective, understanding your audience. That definitely resonated with her.
Good.
What kind of tools do you recommend somebody who's just kind of starting to understand how much writing really has, who understands the value of writing and they want to improve, they want to take the next step? Are there any other proofreading tricks or maybe another perspective you could provide that will help them uh, get take that next step?
Well, the first thing I say, and this is in my own vernacular,
Hmm.
I do a gut dump. I just everything that's in my head, after I follow the outline. Okay, you got to use that outline, but just put it on the paper. And so this is going to word sculpting tool number 10, which is revise, edit, and proofread, to answer your
Hmm.
question. Each one of those steps is distinct. And I explain it. If you can imagine, for the revision part, you've just now done the gut dump, and you haven't word sculpted yet. You've got the first draft. That's like a child's set of jumbled building blocks. You've got the ideas, but they're not necessarily in the order in which you need them. So when you're revising, you check to make sure that the ideas flow, that if you've got a topic sentence, that all the sentences in that paragraph relate to it. Sometimes you'll have to move around sentences or paragraphs. You'll have
Hmm.
to cut ideas that might have crept into your draft that weren't in the outline, that are kind of tangents. So that's the revising. Editing is when you get to looking at sentence structure, and I'm sorry to say syntax, it's a little bit more technical. And then
Hmm.
proofreading is where you go for the punctuation and the capitalization and so forth. Punctuation, I'm going to hit that hard just a little bit here. One of the most common errors in writing nowadays is commas. People don't understand commas. They approach them like you take a handful of salt and you just kind of sprinkle it over the whatever it is you're cooking. Well, there's commas are very easy, and semicolons, and they can mess up the meaning of what you're trying to convey. So proofing for
Hmm.
punctuation is also very important. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but
I think that answers a good part of it, but I think here she asks another question, or which could be tied to this. I think is do you change your writing style for shorter attention spans? Um, that could be answered in several different ways, I imagine. But your take on that?
the answer is yes. For shorter attention spans, you need shorter paragraphs. Longer paragraphs is like a horse pill that you're going to lose
Hmm.
the reader with long paragraphs. So go for shorter, bite-sized paragraphs. If you're writing for under time constraints or with a limited space, then you cannot wax prolific on a particular point. I mean, there's writing that's fun to read. It's in depth. It's like a nice warm massage. You can expand on what you're trying to say, but if you're going in for a quick response, hard hitting writing for a senior executive, for example, you don't have the luxury of going into great detail or using those long flowery words. So there's a definite difference in what the product is and the audience to whom you're writing.
Right, right. She says thank you, and I appreciate that too. And I think that people will, I think people ultimately understand how writing, being able to write plainly, and what that actually is that ultimately you want to try to take the thinking out of people's heads and having to interpret your writing as opposed to making it plain and clear. And I think in answering that question, I thought about how everybody has kind of a short attention span these days. And it's almost, you have to almost assume that people don't have a lot of time to weed through the chaff and the weeds.
It's a golden rule. Write something that you would like to receive. Yeah,
Mm,
another issue here is email. Um, uh, uh, in my book, I've got an entire chapter on email. My friends who are business owners said, "Oh, please tell folks how to write email because I, the business owner, have to rewrite all of my staff's emails." So
mm,
if you structure it, if there's an action involved, you put the word action in the subject line, and then you triage it. What's the action? What's required? When is it due? And then comes the background information. But just cut and quick and precise, and the easier you make it for the reader, the more effective they're going to respond to you.
yeah.
And the other thought, I know we're running out of time here, but the other thought
Hmm.
about is effective writing. When I went through all of those business related reasons on why you need to write, all of that contributes to how effective are you in the office. and how effective are you in the office then feeds into input for your performance review. So if you are able to write the bid that wins that contract, if you are able to secure the grant, if you are able to bring in new business, all of those things are brass rings for you. And then you can turn those around and include those and input to your performance report, and that's what gets you promoted. So it all comes full cycle.
Very interesting and very engaging advice, and I really do thank you for spending time with us today. Your course coming up, you don't have any date specific yet for your course coming up, do you?
It will go on pre-sale in early February. I'll debut it in March. It's called Catapult Your Career Right to Influence. And it's a 3 hour, about a 3 hour online course, but it's broken into modules so you can work it as your time permits. And I take my strategies and word sculpting tools and I apply it to the resume, the cover letter, the strategizing the interview itself, the
Mhm.
post-interview thank you note. Then once you nail the job, there's a section on here's how you do input to your performance reviews. In there's a section on here's how you write those effective email, and then I wrap it up with 15 proven tips on here's how you catapult, here's how you excel in your career based on my 45 years, working in the Air Force and in the federal government. So
Mhm.
everything I know is in that course that's career related. And
Yeah,
it's interactive. So there's scavenger hunts. I play verbal ping pong with you. It has a 30-page exercise book that has lots of challenges that are correlated to the 7 modules. So it's just like I'm talking to you now, back and forth.
excellent, excellent. So people could follow you on LinkedIn and follow you on Twitter to find out when your release time actually is and when the exact time that it releases, and that they can follow you for more information to get your guides and to find out more about the car course. And probably there'll be a bunch of people who are going to want to take that for
Yeah.
sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention is on my homepage on writetoinfluence.net, I have 3 free ebooks. One is called Write to Win a Standout Resume, Write to Win Input to a Performance Review, and Write to Win a Grant Submission. I developed those in the beginning of COVID because I thought that those were the 3 most significant pain points with which people were dealing. So that's there on my homepage.
Great. And I adjusted also the bottom third so it will reflect the website as well. Thank you very much for being with us, Carla. I appreciate you spending time and also reaching out initially. And thank the rest of you. This will be published on the podcast sometime in the spring. And we'll try to align it along with the time that Carla releases the course so that you can be a part of it. Don't miss this stuff. This is good stuff. I could probably talk about it all day. And I still, to this day, take refreshing writing courses just to kind of keep up, my skills, although I write all of the time. In any case, thank the rest of you. You all have a great day. Peace in the Valley of Love. We'll see you next time. We'll see you tomorrow on Job Seeker Nation, where our guest is Jeff Altman. Take care.